Okay, so we're here with Brian O'Donnell, who is my husband, and he is going to, for the purpose of my blog on pulmonary oedema in open water swimming, he's going to describe his experience of what is commonly referred to as SIPE, or swim-induced pulmonary edema. So Brian, can you tell me how long ago was it that you had your first obvious SIPE incident?
It was about 3 years ago.
And what were the water conditions on the day, or what were the weather conditions?
It was an overcast day, kind of like this, but it was at home in Ireland, and we were swimming in an area that we know is cold, so the water temperature was probably between 12 or 13 degrees.
Okay, and was the water calm? Was it a good day to swim?
Yeah, it was pretty calm. There was a little bit of a swell, but it wasn't a serious swell. There was no serious chop.
Okay, and okay, so we know what the weather conditions were. What about your own conditions? How were you feeling on the day of the swim?
It was the evening after we'd gotten back from the Alps, so we'd been to a running camp up in the French Alps, and we'd had a long week of training. So I was feeling pretty tired, and I had noticed getting off the flight that morning that my legs were quite swollen. So I had tired, swollen legs, and they were quite sore.
Okay, and so do you think in that instance you should have gone swimming, or were you thinking that the cold water would possibly help your symptoms?
I thought that this was going to be a nice relaxed swim. The guys were heading out to do about 2 Ks, so the plan was to jump in the water, do 2 Ks nice and easy. The difficulty that we had was that of course I landed late, so the guys were already changed, they were heading down the beach, so I landed in quite late to the swim venue, rushed to get my wetsuit on, and noticed that everything was a little tighter than usual, particularly around the legs.
Okay.
And then I ran down the slipway to get to the beach, and when I got to the beach I had already essentially warmed up with a bit of a run,
okay,
which I hadn't intended doing.
Okay, so before you got in the water, had you warmed up to the point where you were... No, okay.
No.
So you weren't actually warmed up, you just had an elevated heart rate getting into the water?
Yeah.
Okay. So you got into the water, Brian, and you said you were going to swim about 2 kilometres, but how far had you gone when you started to feel unwell? And actually, let's say, how far into your swim did you begin to feel unwell, and what symptoms did you encounter?
So I jumped in the water, I swam after the guys out to a buoy that's normally about 80 metres offshore,
okay,
to catch up with them. So I had to swim hard initially to get out there.
Okay, and we'd say swim hard, but just I suppose for others to know your own ability, what would be your general, we'd say 100 metre swim pace?
So when I'm cruising, we're doing somewhere between 150, 155 per 100 metres at sort of open water cruise.
And what were you doing this day, just to give people an idea, would you think?
I'd imagine the effort level suggest I was probably doing about a 140-ish,
okay,
so I swam hard to get out there.
Okay, so, okay, continue, you started swimming, and how far out before you started to experience?
So I started to feel short of breath, but I knew I'd swum hard to get out there, so it wasn't unexpected. What was unexpected was when I turned at the buoy, having regrouped with the guys. We had a little bit of a chat, and we decided the sighting marks for the swim. I put my head in the water and I felt a little uneasy. I felt more short of breath than I thought I should. The next couple of strokes were difficult, they were laboured, and I noticed that the guys were swimming just at a pace that seemed to be faster than I was able to keep up with, which is unusual for that point in the swim.
Okay, so this was only 80 metres into
80
your swim?
80 metres into the swim.
Okay.
And about 10 strokes again after that, I started to feel really short of breath, and I noticed I was coughing, and I started to cough every time I put my face in the water.
Okay.
So at that stage I stopped, I bobbed up, I had a moment where I checked how far I was out from the shore, and at this stage I was probably about 150 metres from shore. and I signaled to the guys that I didn't feel well, so I started making my way to shore. Very quickly I was unable to put my face in the water.
Okay, so when you say you were unable to put your face in the water, why? What were you
I was
experiencing?
too short of breath.
Okay,
I was way too short of breath. I was coughing every 2 or 3 breaths, and there was a taste of blood in the back of my throat. So I started to taste blood, and then as I got closer to shore, breaststroking with great difficulty, I started to cough up sort of frothy, blood-stained phlegm.
okay. So this was on your way back. I believe at some point during your swim, your swimming partners intervened and they
Yeah.
had seen you heading back for shore.
They saw that I was heading for shore. I'd signaled to them that I wasn't feeling well. We'd gotten back to about 30 meters from the beach and I was exhausted. I literally couldn't move forward any further. So the guys had swum around me, and they were sort of approaching me with caution, nudging me towards shore, and as soon as I could get my feet under me, I then had to get the wetsuit off. It just felt really, really tight, really, really restrictive. And then I sat on the beach and I caught my breath, and it took quite a considerable length of time, probably about 20 minutes before I could even get to standing.
Okay. So as you were sitting on the beach, were you still coughing up?
Yep.
Okay. So after that event, I'm assuming you went home and, over the next couple of days, did your symptoms continue or did they resolve?
My symptoms continued. I felt short of breath. I was coughing up phlegm for about 3 days afterwards, to the point where I felt the need to speak to one of my consultant cardiology colleagues. So I had organised to have an echocardiogram and an ECG, all of which were normal. But I think it's very important, if this happens to anybody, that they do go and see a physician, because this type of event can be associated with underlying heart dysfunction. So it's very important that they get it checked out.
Okay, perfect. And has it happened to you again since, Brian?
Twice.
Okay, and were the symptoms as extensive on those occasions?
No, because I recognised them and I cut the swim.
Okay.
Most recently we were away, we had a heavy training week in Mallorca on the bikes, with lots and lots of climbing, and in the heat, and my legs just felt quite swollen. So after 5 days of heavy training, I put a wetsuit on to get in the water, and I swam about 50 meters away from the deck into the Mediterranean. Warm water, and I started to feel those symptoms come on again. So I signaled to the guys that I was swimming with that I didn't feel well, and I just turned around and got out of the water.
Okay, and when you say the symptoms came on, to what degree did they come on? Did you have the cough and the frothy sputum, blood tinged, or?
No.
No, okay.
So what happened was I felt that I wasn't capable of swimming at the same pace as the people around me, which was unusual, because they're similarly paced athletes. I felt that I was excessively short of breath, and I just had that sort of sense of unease.
Okay.
And when I recognised those things coming on, I terminated the swim.
Okay. And I noticed on that occasion actually that that evening going into dinner, you were a little bit wheezy. Am I right in remembering that? Yeah. Okay. So, would you give any particular advice to swimmers heading out for a swim themselves, who may or may not have experienced this, who may or may not have the experience to recognise when this happens? Is there any advice, any one piece of advice you would really kind of highlight to them?
This problem is caused by compression in the water. So the bottom line is, get out of the water. Just be calm, head to shore, and terminate the swim. If you get out of the water, you're not going to have a problem.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian.